It's Friday, September 6th, and I'm your host, Paula Hersey. On today's show, we look back at 10 years of smiling faces at the Hyannis Youth and Community Center, offer a gentle reminder about being a good steward at our beaches, and a special back-to-school segment for Feel Good Friday. Now for a look at municipal and legislative notes. Batten the hatches, Barnstable. Hurricane Dorian is expected to pass far offshore of Cape Cod during the day Friday, today, and early Saturday. The National Hurricane Center posted a tropical storm warning for Cape Cod and the islands on Thursday and predicted the storm to pass southeast of Nantucket. Portions of Cape Cod could experience wind gusts of 40 to 60 miles an hour with heavy rain through early Saturday morning. How time flies when you're having fun. Next week marks the 10th anniversary for the Hyannis Youth and Community Center. Lynn Poyant, the Director of Community Services, joins us in studio to take a look back at the HYCC and the reasons for the facility. It's all about the kids. Happy anniversary! The Hyannis Youth and Community Center is going to be 10 years old on September 14th. Big party planned. With me today, Director of Community Services, Lynn Poyant. We're going to talk about the history of this really storied building, and then some of the milestones over the last 10 years. So let's start off with the Community Services Department. The HYCC is under your purview, and
Right.
I understand it might have been your first project?
It was 2 o'clock in the afternoon on my first day on the job. The town manager at the time, John Klim, came out of his office. My desk happened to be right outside of his office. He said, "You know that Youth and Community Center everybody's talking about? Well, that falls under your department. So we want to make sure that that happens, and we'd like to get it up and running as quickly as possible. So let's see what you can do." And that was November of 2005. The town had the foresight to hire an owner's project manager for DPW around the same time. And so there were a number of things that had to happen, because anytime a project talking about 2 sheets of ice had been discussed in the town of Barnstable, it had always been a private venture. It hadn't been a public venture. And when the private ventures kind of didn't pan out, they came to the town and asked if whether or not there was a way for us to make it happen. With our hockey teams and everything else, there was a desire, and Barnstable Youth Hockey Association was a really big player at the time. But you know, with high school, Division I, Division II, those kinds of things, you wanted to make sure that you had the appropriate facility. The Kennedy rink that we had was really the only open air rink on the entire Cape. You had Gallo, Tony Kent, Charles Moore, they were all enclosed facilities. So it made sense that the largest town had a facility that was something that we could really talk about. So the town hired a consulting firm to do a feasibility study for the project. It was Charles Johnson out of, I believe, Chicago, Illinois. And they came down for numerous meetings to discuss, get input from the community to find out what it was that people wanted. At the time, the YMCA was going through a capital campaign, and you know, the first conversations were people wanted a pool, they wanted all these things, but we had to be realistic about what the facility could be and couldn't be. It involved the assemblage of parcels, because there had been some homes on corner projects. Where the center ice of the former Kennedy rink is actually demarked in the parking lot at the new facility, so that people can actually stand on a circle that says center ice for the Kennedy rink.
Oh, I didn't even know that. That's cool.
Yeah. So there was a lot of input. We worked with the Youth Commission. The Youth Commission passed out a survey during homeroom so that the students could have their input, and it was really fascinating because originally the students wanted the youth center part to be down below. And then when the more they talked about it, it's like, no, we want it up, we want windows, we want to see who's coming in and out of the building. So there were a number of components that came to the table. And we wound up having the groundbreaking a little bit later than what was originally hoped, but it happened on January 18th, 2008. And the project was actually not supposed to be completed until January of 2010, but we were able to open the doors in September of 2009.
Oh. So let's talk a little bit about, you know, Barnstable is the largest town on the Cape. We have a lot of youth in this town.
We do.
And a lot of youth concentrated within that radius of the youth center. What's some of the impacts that were thought of that bringing youth together into a facility, regardless of playing hockey, because not everybody plays hockey,
Right.
but this really is, it's got all sorts of different types of things that not just youth, but everybody can participate.
Right, and thank you for the question, because hockey was one element, but in our conversations with the community, the whole youth bandwidth we wanted to bring into consideration. At the time, within a 1 mile radius, walking radius of the facility, there were 3,000 children, school-aged children, and the thought was, you know, transportation's always been an issue, and when you're talking about that number of youth, it just made perfect sense for it to be located in Hyannis and not into one of the other villages within the town. You know, the whole thing with the gymnasium, making sure that there was open gym time, making sure that there was a computer room, because a lot of people have maybe access to computers, but some of the people don't have the internet at home, and having a facility where they would be able to access the internet for homework and other things was really important. The original plan had included a full pro shop. So right now the pro shop is half the size of what the original plan was, but that's because community members went to the town manager and said, we need a space that we can call the multicultural resource room, and make sure that the people of, you know, of every background feels welcome within the facility, and by having it right up front, it's a greeting place, and it's now recently changed its some of its use. I mean, it still has the multicultural use, but it has the Youth Commission that meets there, but it's now the Barnstable Public Schools Family Engagement Center, which you recently did a piece on, and that has been a tremendous benefit to the, it's provided a benefit because it's one-stop shopping for the parents, but because it's multilingual, they're actually showing off the facility so that people who might not have been able to or haven't known about the facility feel welcome, and then they've come back. There was actually a father and son who had registered for school, and then they came back later to play basketball for open gym, which is really a really great activity.
And the evolution of it. So one of the stories that when we were talking earlier about the track that came up over the gym, why did that? It's raised, so it's interesting. It's a great story.
Yeah. So when we were doing all the feasibility studies and everything else, we had a lot of public meetings, and there were mothers that were saying that they spend so much time in the freezing rinks that they would really like to have a walking track so that they would have some place to go, and that they weren't having to sit and being so cold, because even though it's indoors, it's ice.
Right.
So there's that element, and that was a great addition, and we find that there's a lot of people that have been making use of that for, we have a number of doctor's offices and rehab places that will bring people who are recovering from strokes and things like that. We have walking programs that the Cape Cod Municipal Health Group have done. We have free yoga in the gymnasium that's sponsored by Cape Cod Healthcare. We have, you know, there's a lot of family and community-oriented activities. One of the things that we couldn't do in the old Kennedy Rink was anything for toddlers, you know, and so we have Miss Laurie's Kids Club, and it's really fun to see the kids doing exercises, but that's not a program that we couldn't have participated with in the past. So it's from birth to
99.
To 99.
Or 101 or 2 or
Yeah.
6, and as some of our seniors are proving, longevity is the Barnstable way.
Right, and the Barnstable Adult Community Center has programs that they've offered. They've done a walking program. I think it's kind of on hiatus right now, but they usually bring it back, especially in the winter months when people they may not want to walk the mall, but they want to make sure that they can walk in a safe environment, and so that's what the Youth and Community Center brings to them.
Yeah, and you mentioned the school dovetailing with some of the rooms there, the multicultural room with the Family Engagement Center, but also it started with after-school programs, and now that's been expanded. Tell us a little bit, I mean, were these things thought of when you first did, or is this just the evolution of the building?
It's the evolution of the building. Our town manager, Mark Ells, is very youth-oriented, and there's always been a concern about what happens to children whose parents are working and they may not have some kind of program that they can go to after school. So it started out with the 6th, 7th school, the intermediate school, and then it expanded to Barnstable United Elementary School, so that we now have the 4 or 5. They are, we bring them into the facility with transportation, and the activities are really very engaging. The kids find social, school help. There's a physical activity part, so it's a really well-rounded thing that tries to match with the school day. They've also had some fun activities. Mark Bordley, our youth center manager, who's terrific, had actually played host to a Family Feud game with participants from the after-school program and the Barnstable Police Department, and it was a lot of fun. And just seeing the reactions of everybody with the answers to the questions was really great. Right. But the facility has enabled the town to bring a lot of international and national programs. We were the second facility to host the Theater on Ice program. I think we were maybe 18 months old at the time when we hosted that event, which is actually theater on ice. I mean, it was the elaborate costumes and the sets and everything else were pretty amazing. We've had a great partnership with the Yarmouth Ice Club, Cape Cod Skating Club, and the Yarmouth Ice Club and the Bourne Skating Club have also brought to us U.S. Figure Skating Association sectionals, regionals, qualifying activities. We had at one point, thanks to Patty Lloyd and the Cape Cod Chamber of Commerce, she's amazing, and she's helped us put in bids for different programs. Like we had volleyball, college volleyball. We had Division II hockey at one point. We had the Women's Hockey East for a number of years. That had a great draw. And the only thing is that they went back to where their games were held because that's where their fan base was, and they couldn't get all of their fan base here. But there's always a chance that we may get them back in the future. The Junior Celtics have come to the gymnasium for a couple of times. We had a boxing match inside the
that's right, I remember that.
Gymnasium. The first Y Achievers program, which actually also participates out of the Youth and Community Center, they had their first banquet at the Youth and Community Center. They transformed the gym. People couldn't believe that the gym, because they had gotten special baffling and stuff like that, so that the sound was, tampered down and everything else. The Shepley Community Room is used for all different kinds of programs. We have, it's just, you walk in there and it's hard not to smile when you see everybody's, they're having fun for the most part. And one of the best things that ever happened was the town manager and the chief Sonneban put Brian Morrison into the facility, and Brian is just one of the most caring officers. He's great. He not only works with the students, but he also works with the parents. Sometimes parents have issues that they don't know who that they can talk to, or if Brian sees something that's going on with their kids, he may give the parents a call and say, I think that you should be aware. And that's a tremendous, just heartwarming
The
thing.
whole resources of the facility, from the people to the activities, Festival of Museums. I mean, this particular event has grown over the years from, a handful of museums the first year to now a full-day event that has almost every museum out there here on the Cape.
And we had the World Series trophy, the latest World Series trophy here, which was also a big draw. So that was really tremendous. We had a quilt show, one year. The two rinks, one's on sand and one is on concrete. And the thought was that we could, if not needed, we would melt the second sheet of ice and then have activities on that sheet of ice. And in the early days, we did melt the ice, and we did have, a couple things. There was one year where the roller derby was skating there, and they had hoped to come back, but we weren't able to melt the ice because of the amount of need for that. So that was a really nice problem to have. And I have to say that the town council, the town manager have been extremely supportive of everything that we've done over there, and we have now DPW is maintaining the facility, which has just makes the facility shine, and we hear it all the time. When the United States Figure Skating Association president was in for the Cranberry Open recently, they all commented on how it didn't look 10 years old. They thought the facility was brand new.
Right.
And that's great.
Yeah, the whole refurb that they kind of did in the past year, and obviously they did some ice work as well, because we did a time lapse of that work, which was fascinating.
It has to happen every now and then with the repainting and everything else. So.
Right. So when you look back on the 10 years and the work that went into getting this building up and running, and the concessions and the compromises of all the boards and commissions and things that had to work to do this, what's the feeling?
It's all about the kids. It's all about the kids. That's what it's been about since day number one, and that's what we continue to do. And you know, as long as that remains the focus, that's what it makes everything all worth it. I think that there's literally hundreds of people that were involved in every aspect of this program, and it'd be hard for us to come up with a list to thank them all. But it's all about the kids, and I think that's why the town council voted for the money. At the time, the town council president now, Jim Crocker, was actually on the town council at the time, and he asked a question: how many seats in the Kennedy rink? And the Kennedy rink at the original time wouldn't have been able to hold the audience for a Barnstable Falmouth hockey game. And so he's like, well, don't you think that it should? So they had to go back to the drawing board. It cost a little bit more money, and but the town council again voted to pass that. So it's a $24.7 million project, and without people like our finance director, Mark Milne, who was crunching numbers and everything else. We got support from the federal government in $1 million, $3.5 million from the state. The Hyannis Youth and Community Center Foundation raised 1.637 something, and the LaRusso Foundation had given us $1 million. So it's just amazing, the support that we got, and the rest of it's been taxpayer money.
Right. How do families get involved with that facility?
Walk on in. There's somebody that's usually behind the glass that can greet you. We have memberships. There are daily memberships. There are yearly memberships. It's $20 for someone to become a member, so that they can go in. They can.
That's $20 a year.
A year.
A year.
A year.
A year.
A year. And you can go in. You can use the open gym. You can go on, use the youth center, which is where there's a bunch of different kinds of games and things of that nature. That we have a great vendor as our concessionaire with Casual Gourmet. One of the things that people do all the time is they do birthday parties in the Shepley room. And sometimes what they'll do is they'll do a birthday party in the Shepley room, and they'll get ice time so that the entire group can go out and try that out. There's so many activities that are happening on the 14th for people to try out. There's some things outside, some things inside, but we hope that everyone will come on down and celebrate this great town asset that we have.
It's fantastic. It's for the kids.
It's for the kids.
Awesome.
It's all
Thank
about
you.
the kids.
Thank you so much, Lynn. As you head out to the beaches after Labor Day, please remember to help keep our pristine waters and recreation areas free of trash. Pack in and carry out is our motto. Don't be a litter bug.
Well, I saw Chris Granella of DPW Structures and Grounds out here really early starting to deal with that trash. And what you see there is, you have the 2 bins that are filled, but then people just decide that it's okay to put it all over the ground as well. So you end up with this enormous trash pile. And Chris was just doing his job picking up all that garbage, but it was an unbelievable amount of garbage. And it's not just, you know, your McDonald's bag or a couple beer cans. It is also household trash, it's beach chairs, it's coolers, and why people think that that's okay to leave behind in those trash barrels. I mean, those trash barrels are done as a courtesy to people, that if you have a little bit of trash with you, you know, yes, we're going to provide these for you. But people really abuse it, and I would say that's visitors and locals alike. And so we, you know, this is what you deal with. And the 4th of July weekend is absolutely horrific. I mean, I've already been hearing stories coming from the other beaches across town, Veterans, Azleton Park, that it's the same thing. It's like a bomb went off. And it's really a shame. Well, so all things environmental are a great concern of mine, and I'm very passionate about it. For years I worked in the animal conservation welfare field, was very much aware of the impact of our garbage on marine life and the detrimental effect it has on our oceans. And over the years I've seen an increasing amount of trash ending up on the sides of the roads, on our beaches, and it really sort of was mind-boggling to me that people come here for the beauty of this place. And those of us who live here, you know, we realize how lucky we are to live in such a beautiful place. But then how can you just dump stuff on your gorgeous beaches, on the side of your road? And you know, it's sort of this sort of personal responsibility and this awareness that people just don't realize the impact of what it is that they do. I mean, you know, when you're on the side of the river and you leave your bait boxes behind and your monofilament line, that trash ends up in our rivers and goes out to our seas. That line ends up in the bellies of loggerhead turtles. It tangles around seagulls' legs. It's horrible. And so, you know, really the idea was, as much as I would like to think that everyone would pick up after themselves, and that is ultimately the goal, the reality is that we each have to just pick up after each other as well, because we can't count on everyone to do their part. So I know that I want to walk this beach and not see plastic and not see trash. So you know what, it's my responsibility. If I see it, I can't walk past it. So that was where the idea came from, was really just to be better stewards of this place that we love. So for example, just be responsible for your own trash, right? You brought it here. It's very easy to take it out. And then it goes back into your waste stream at home or at the public beach. There is a big, you know, garbage bin. You can put your garbage there. So, you know, it's really just personal responsibility. And then, you know, I know people as you're walking, you know, if you see someone else's trash, you're not inclined to pick it up. But if you're able, just grab it and take it to the trash bin, you know, just to do the part. The other thing too is that what people really have to understand, and I think most people really do care, they're just not aware, right? They don't realize the impact of their purchases and that there is a cost to everything you buy and use. So meaning that, you know, whether it's the beach chair that you've just decided you wanted for one day and now you're throwing it on the beach and maybe it's going to go out with the high tide, or it's that, you know, additional piece of clothing that you're buying, at some point that ends up in the waste stream. And if it doesn't go to the Barnstable transfer station, it's going to Ohio or someplace else. Somebody is going to own that trash at some point. So we all have to think about our consumption, but then it's also being really wary, particularly with plastics and microplastics, because these things are so detrimental to our environment. And if that isn't cause enough for you to want to change behavior, think about the fact that all that plastic that ends up in the bellies of fish, if you're eating fish, it's ending up inside of you as well. So there are real human health issues related to this as well, and I think that's something we all have to think about. I think we all have to just recognize that we share this place with each other, with all the other species that are here, and if we want it to remain beautiful and a place that people want to come and people want to live, and you want to be able to enjoy this place for the beauty that it is, we just have to be responsible for our own selves. And if you see somebody dumping trash, just kindly go up to them and say, hey, listen, would you mind? You know, we're trying to take care of this place. You know, there are also things I think we can do across the town, like for instance with Long Beach here, we're going to be doing a pack-in, pack-out pilot program starting next week, with that idea that this is a conservation area and people need to recognize it as such, and packing in, packing out makes sense for a place like this. So We thank everyone for their help in keeping our places clean here. We started, this is our third week now that we're doing this, but we organized a Sunday beach cleanup. So every Sunday morning at 8 a.m. we're doing beach cleanups on Long Beach in Centerville. And we're doing that until September, and then in September we're going to extend those beach cleanups all the way down to Craigville and Covels, because our lifeguards, who do a great job keeping the beaches clean during the year through our rec department, during the summer I mean, they're not here come the fall, so that's when DPW could use the extra hands keeping the rest of our beaches clean. So 8 a.m. Sunday mornings.
The town of Barnstable employees sent their children back to school this past week as well. We compiled some of those sweet and bittersweet moments of the first day of school. Enjoy this special Feel Good Friday. I'm Paula Hersey, and thank you for watching Barnstable Today.